Thank you, though, Jim.
Okay, I'll stop the video.
All right, cool, guys. Good to see you. Welcome. Today, we're talking about how to combine LinkedIn and YouTube to drive leads. And this is going to be pretty short, pretty to the point. And really, it's just about combining these two really powerful tools to drive your business, to get leads, to make sales, all of that really good stuff. So my goal today is really to give you a simple and effective way to generate more leads using LinkedIn and YouTube. And just to give you a little bit more detail about me. So we're not going to be in PowerPoints at all. You can see my slides. I've only got a few slides because I'm going to actually be like getting on LinkedIn and showing you stuff. And we can actually, even for like, so you know a little bit more about me, look at my LinkedIn profile. You know, I'm a marketing and sales consultant. I deal mainly with how do you structure your offers so that you make more sales, it's more appealing. And then how do you leverage LinkedIn and YouTube to drive those leads? That's where my main focus is. I've been doing this for about 10 years. The same thing, you know, using social media, Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube, and creating better offers. Been doing that for a long time. Before this, I was in the nonprofit sector. And before that, I was working for the Walt Disney Company. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. You know, people always like to hear about my time at Disney, but we can talk about that another time. So really cool. Let's look right here. I think the first thing we really want to talk about is why do we even want to talk about or use LinkedIn and YouTube? And these are two very powerful tools in their own right. And so there's reasons for using both of them. And I'm going to try my best to kind of show you how you can use them in tandem, but really individually, they're very, very powerful. So let's start with LinkedIn and talk about why LinkedIn. So first of all, building an audience, okay? LinkedIn is a lot like a giant database. You know, if we go to my network here, you know, I've got 9,000 connections, and these are targeted people that are in my, you know, some of them are from like when I was in college or from previous jobs, but the majority of those people are people who are in my target audience who want to hear about what I talk about, and I can provide value directly to them. This is a really powerful tool for simply building an audience. And what's really cool, if you're not familiar with LinkedIn, is that, you know, if we type founder here in the search bar, LinkedIn has really powerful native tools for finding and connecting with your ideal clients. So like I just wrote founder in here. Look, these are all second connections, and we could even like go further down the pipeline and filter these people even further. And if you've got Sales Navigator, which is the paid version of LinkedIn, you can filter these even more to where you're really focused on these are the people you really want to connect with, and you're connecting with really high quality people. So that's reason number one for you using LinkedIn, is that you can build just a fantastically focused database audience of potential clients. Number two, create conversations. So it is social media, right? So through a mixture of direct messages and through content, you can really have high quality conversations with your potential clients. And then the third thing there is you can actually nurture your leads. So once they, you know, unlike it, well, actually, let's compare it to an email list. You know, if someone comes on your email list, what do you do with them? You send them content, and over time, they become more and more familiar with what you do until it comes to the time where it's time for them to hire somebody to do that. And you're the first person on the top of their mind. LinkedIn, very, very similar, right? We can use content to nurture leads over time. So maybe they're not ready right now to purchase, but through our content, through our interactions with them, we can nurture them. So the two big takeaways, I think the two big reasons why you want to consider using LinkedIn are twofold. One, short-term leads. You know, it's really possible, really powerful for you to connect with somebody, start a conversation, get on a sales call very, very quickly. My record is in a matter of hours. I think it was 2 hours. I said it was my record, and then I don't know the precise number. My record is like 2 hours from connecting with a stranger to making a sale and collecting money. So speed is very, very possible. Now, most of your efforts are not going to be that fast, right? But speed is a possibility. And then the second big reason is building relationships. Investing in relationships is always, 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 always the right move. I don't know if I had enough always there, but you should always be investing in relationships. And LinkedIn is very powerful for, I mean, even the terms connecting, right? To connect with your ideal clients and have real relationships formed. Okay, now let's talk about YouTube. Why YouTube? I don't know if you know this, but YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world. And it is owned by Google, which is the first largest search engine in the world. So it is very, very much tied into when people are making searches on the internet, YouTube is very, very connected to that. So the power of SEO, the power of being visible, the power of searchability is very, very present on YouTube. And it's a whole ecosystem unto itself. So the big reason why you want to be on YouTube is the long-term asset for visibility and authority. And I'm going to show you this later, but I'll just bring up this video as an example. This is a clip that I posted from a speech that I gave, several years ago, and it has over 11,000 views on it. It's not even like SEO, like targeted, like I just kind of cut it out, put it up there, but it happens to be a topic that people are searching for, and it's gotten over 11,000 views. That is the power of YouTube, where it's this passive, long-term game where your visibility can increase, your authority can increase, and you make something once, and if you put the right terms, you put the right positioning, it can perform for you over and over and over again. So those are the big reasons for YouTube. Well, it's a long-term asset for visibility and authority. Can it lead to short-term sales? Yes, especially if you've got like really clear calls to action. Can you build relationships and have conversations? Yes, as well. But really, those things are easier and more effective on LinkedIn. And the drawback to LinkedIn is that you create content and then it gets buried and never seen again. So YouTube and LinkedIn really complement each other in terms of short-term and long-term approaches. So that's why we want to use both of them. Now, the problem is, how do we bridge these two powerful tools? We've got YouTube, we've got LinkedIn. They're very different. How do we merge them together, bring them together? And what we want to do is have a bridge between the two platforms that is just simple, it's effective, it's not overwhelming. I think the problem with most digital marketing strategies is that it's just so much work, right? There's so much going on, so many moving pieces. So we want to really simplify this. And there's two activities that I'm going to suggest to you that bridge the gap between these two platforms. And that is one, a client-focused show, which we'll talk more about in a second. And then two, a monthly event or live training, such as what we're doing right now, right? If you were to do something like what I'm doing right now, every single month, that's going to be really, really key to this process. So let's look at each of these tools individually one more time and how this bridges together, okay? So when you're talking LinkedIn strategy, there's four major keys that we want to look at. So number one is that we want to be building a really targeted audience. So remember, I talked about all these filters, right? I think two great analogies for LinkedIn are networking events, like treat LinkedIn like a networking event. And then the other great analogy for LinkedIn is treat it like an email list. It doesn't matter how big your email list is. If it's full of just garbage contacts, you're never going to get anything out of it. It's the same with your LinkedIn connections. If you are not connected to the right people, it's never really going to perform for you. So you've got to make sure that you're getting quality connections. You're using these filters, and we could do a whole training just on how to use these filters. But I mean, look at this. You can filter by a degree of connection. So first connection is your direct connection. Second connection is somebody connected to your connection. Third is, connection of connection of connection, and so on and so forth, right? I like to think of that as like, 10 degrees to Kevin Bacon, right? How close are you to Kevin Bacon? You being Kevin Bacon, how close are they to you? So you can filter by connections. You can filter it by location. If you know what company you're targeting, you can filter by company, by school they went to, industry, language, and this is just the free version. If you get into their paid version, there's even more stuff that you can do. So that's the number one key here when dealing with LinkedIn is you want to make sure that you're building a quality audience. Quality in equals quality out. Okay. So here's the thing too, is that you need to be consistent with your growth. It's not about getting to a huge number and then stopping, because if you do that, LinkedIn runs like Facebook on an algorithm. So if you just stop connecting with people, your algorithm, it dies down. There's no fire behind it. So it's actually about actively growing and actively participating in the community. So don't worry about trying to make a huge sprint. The limit on LinkedIn right now for connections is 30,000. Don't be like, oh, I've got to get to 30,000 as fast as possible. No, like you want to make sure you're connecting with quality people, that you have a purpose for connecting, and that you're just consistent with it. And that's going to give you a nice warm algorithm so that everything else is working really well for you. Okay, speaking of algorithm, the next key is creating great content. Okay, so content that engages, educates, and inspires. And I put this little caveat here because essentially we want to, and I'm even going to highlight this. Really, we want to provide value to your audience, and value is created in taking action, right? When do you get the six-pack abs? When you actually go to the gym consistently, right? When do you make the money? When you put in the work, right? So like action is where the value is created. So for your content to be valuable, it should lead your audience to making some sort of decision and taking action. Now, that doesn't mean that you're always all the time being like, hey, buy my stuff, buy my stuff, buy my stuff. No, that's salesy, it's pitchy, it's not great. But it should be leading people to making a decision or thinking about things a different way, shifting their paradigm so that they eventually take action. And the ideal thing would be if that action lines up with them making a purchase from you. Then it's a win-win, right? Because they're getting the value from taking action. You get to participate in that by also making a sale. And just a side note, great content creates inbound conversations. And if we were to look at my profile homepage here, we can really see the difference between good content and bad content just by scrolling through really quickly. This was just posted, actually, no, it's 6 days old. And it's got no comments, no likes. That's not necessarily bad because he's got kind of just a quote here. But if we scroll down, the majority of this content here is just screaming at you. Like, it's not fantastic. And then you come across someone like Gary Vaynerchuk, who is, saying stuff like kindness is the only currency I'm interested in, and getting just thousands of likes and hundreds of comments here. He's a big name, so maybe, it's unfair to compare us to him, but it's like he is adding a valuable tidbit to the conversation and people are responding to it. And you better believe that Gary doesn't have to go slide into everybody's DMs all the time, that his clients are coming to him, right? Post successful. I don't remember posting something, so hopefully I didn't just post something on accident. But anyways, so it's the same thing for you, right? Great content on your part. You might not get thousands of likes or hundreds of comments, but great content will create inbound conversations. And it's much easier to turn inbound conversations into sales conversations than it is those cold leads when you're trying to reach out to people. Very cool. Okay. Key number 3 here is to have conversations. So I know I just kind of like talked poorly about sliding into DMs and about having conversations, but really we want you to be having authentic conversations. Conversations and relationships always lead to sales, always, always, always lead to sales. So the key here is to be authentic, to add value, and to always be inviting people to something. We'll put this there, always be inviting. And here's where that bridge comes into place, right? The bridge between LinkedIn and YouTube. If you are running a YouTube show or podcast and you have an event that you're hosting through LinkedIn every month, then you always have something to be inviting people to, something of value to buy my stuff. You're going to be coming to them saying, hey, it's nice to meet you. I have this thing. Are you interested in taking a look at it? It's a much friendlier, natural approach to starting conversations. And whether they say yes or no, it opens the door to you having a conversation. And that's where those quick sales can happen. So always, always, always be inviting to something. And my suggestion is an event, and a podcast or show. And let's talk about the event really quickly. So LinkedIn, I've got this page up for you, has really powerful event management software. This is essentially, you don't have to, you're not actually going to host your event on LinkedIn. You could, if you have access to LinkedIn Live, you could do the event right on LinkedIn. But really, this is like a landing page or a registration page for your event. So when you structure this, so I actually just made this event yesterday. And you can see, I haven't even done anything with it yet. And I've already got 3 people registered there. And the thing about this is that when you structure it underneath your business page, once they come here, all they do is click. For me, it says invite, but for them, it says join. They click that, and then a pop-up will show up and say, hey, when you register for this event, your email address will be shared with the organizer, and you may receive emails about this event. So essentially, they're opting into your email newsletter. So you're growing your email list and using LinkedIn to do it, right? So this is seriously, it's a registration page for your event, right? So if you've got this registration page on LinkedIn and you're messaging people and you're connecting with people and you're inviting them to register for this event, you've got a very non-confrontational way, a very natural, friendly way to invite them to, a sales adjacent event and at the same time grow your email list. Now, here's something cool too. I wasn't necessarily planning on talking about this, but if I were to click as the host, I've got this invite button here, right? For you, if you were to go register for this, it would say join or something like that. But for me, I can push this button and it gives me a list of all of my connections. These are all of my connections. And I can use filters to make this list smaller and smaller and smaller until it's a targeted group of people. And LinkedIn says that you can invite up to 1,000 people per week to your event. So that means if I give myself some lead time, let's say I give myself 30 days, 4 weeks of lead time, I can invite 4,000 people to this event. Now, not all 4,000 people are going to join, but how many people might? You might get a couple hundred or even 1,000 people registered for your event by simply using the power of LinkedIn's tools. Now, it's interesting because if you're doing this, though, 1,000 people, who's got time to message and connect with 1,000 people? It's a big daunting task. So that's where working with someone like me comes in, where you're not in there, adding 1,000 people. We can actually streamline that so that it's on autopilot for you. Okay, so let's go back to our event here. So along with having a great excuse to invite people, there's 2 other things that I want to point out about hosting an event. So number 1 is that you can repurpose the content from the event onto YouTube. So like, let's say during this conversation, I say something that's really insightful, or there's a piece of content that's really powerful. I could cut out pieces of this presentation and then put them on YouTube. And now they live on YouTube, harnessing that SEO power to grow over time, right? So there's some repurposing in content that we can do over on YouTube. And then number 2 is that if you're doing these events and you get 2 people on the call, guess what? It's better than a one-on-one sales call or a one-on-one demo. So even if we just talked about maybe you could get like thousands of people registered, maybe you only get 5 people registered and only 2 show up, right? It's still worth your time because you're getting content and it's better than a one-on-one sales call or demo, right? Like you've already improved over the one-on-one stuff. Okay, so I'm going to look over at the chat really quick. Tell me, guys, are there any questions about what we just talked about? I've covered a ton of content already. Let me know. Give me a 1 in the chat if you're with me, if you're on track with this. Any questions or concerns? I'm going to grab a drink while you do that. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Rich. Okay, cool. Everyone's on track with us. Okay, so let's talk YouTube. So I've got 3 main things for you on YouTube. And number 1 is that you need to provide consistent value. YouTube is all about, if you want to build, okay, but let me take a step back, because YouTube is powerful. Even if you post a video and then walk away and never touch it again, our example here of this video here, I posted it, I walked away, I never thought about it again, 11,000 views. 11,000 people are seeing my name. They're engaging with my content. They're seeing, look, my email address is right there. They're seeing all this stuff. So even as like nothing else, if I did nothing else, there's a ton of value right there. However, it becomes most valuable when you are consistently adding content to the conversation. One, that builds your library of things that like people could search for, but two, the way we consume videos has changed, and YouTube is not only the second largest search engine, it's also one of the largest content consumption sites like Hulu or Netflix. People are going to YouTube to engage and consume content. So the more consistent you are, people actually start subscribing to you and looking forward to your videos. So if you can make videos very, very specific to your audience, it can be very, very powerful. Now, here's the question we get all the time is how do we create content that we know our audience likes? And this is the genius of this strategy, is that if you create a client-focused show on YouTube video, then content creation becomes super easy, and you can take the audio out of your video and also use it as a podcast. So this is a podcast / YouTube strategy play here, right? And let me show you what I mean. So first of all, it's got to be client focused. What does that mean? That means it's a show for your clients. Now, this is my show right here. It's called Built to Scale. And the way it works is that you actually bring on people who fall into your target or ideal audience on as guests, and you talk about the things that they care about, right? Like what's on their mind about their industry. So in my case, if we look at my show, we're talking about how do you grow a business? How do you increase your revenue? How do you make more sales? How do you, you leverage LinkedIn, YouTube, all that stuff that I talk about, that my clients care about. I'm bringing them on. We're talking about their particular situation. So this is going to do a couple things for you. One is it puts the content creation on autopilot, like easy mode, right? Like you don't have to think about what's the content going to be. You just got to find some guests. That's all you got to do. And if you can find the right guests, the content create itself, it'll be compelling, it'll be valuable because you're having real conversations with real people in your target audience. Okay, so that's number one. Number two is like, if we look at these conversations, if we were to click on any of these, let's click on Matt here. Let's say nobody else ever sees this interview with Matt, right? And I'm trying to get a picture. There he is. No one else ever sees this interview, just me and him. Well, I had a high quality conversation with an ideal client. And it is much easier to start a sales conversation with someone that you've developed that relationship with than it is to cold call, right? And nobody ever says no to coming on a podcast or coming on a show. People love it. They love the visibility. They love the attention. No one ever says no. So like, this is a really easy way to get face-to-face with ideal clients and build a relationship, having a great conversation, and then transition that into a sales conversation, right? Transition that into a sales call. So I don't know what price points you guys are dealing with, but how much money do you make from one sale? If you did a podcast every week, and out of 12, let's say you do 12 episodes a quarter, out of 12 episodes, you close 4 of those clients, that's not even 50%. That can be a really nice boost to your bottom line. And you get all the benefits of like, now it's on YouTube. So we got the SEO power. Now it's a podcast. So now we've got that authority building. And you get to then take that content over to LinkedIn, reuse it, repurpose it, and just get that machine running even hotter, right? So here's another cool thing too you can do is when you take this approach. So this is Suzanne, and she's actually a client of mine. And I had her come on and I asked her, hey, what's it like working with me? And she gave me a testimonial. So now I've got a 2-minute testimonial from my client that I can take this clip and I can send it to people on LinkedIn. It's a podcast, all that stuff we just talked about just builds and builds and builds and builds, right? So consistent value, and the easiest way to do that is make a client-focused show / podcast, and that's going to help you put your content creation on easy mode and get you face-to-face with potential clients and make some really easy sales, right? Make your marketing pay for itself. Okay, other keys to effective YouTube strategy: use SEO and keywords to rank on YouTube. Your thumbnail, also super important. If we look over at my show again, look at all these thumbnails here. Here, if we go back, all of these have thumbnails on them. It's not just, it makes it a lot more easy for people to click on it, right? A lot more appealing. So we want to make sure we have that. And then also repurpose your videos for content on LinkedIn. So we're leveraging the power of YouTube, and then we're repurposing onto LinkedIn. Okay, Jim asked a question. He's saying, are you saying to provide free consultation to prospective clients or guests on your show? And then among other things, you'll be converting some of these guests into clients. Cool idea. So yes and no. So, watch my show if you want to see an example of it. It's Built to Scale. You can find it at builttoscalehq.com. That's where they're all housed, or on my YouTube channel. There's a fine line here because you're not trying to bait and switch. When you invite somebody to your show, it is not a thinly veiled attempt to simply have a sales conversation. Like, you're first and foremost, you need to be honest, and you need to be like, your intentions need to match what you're saying. So if you invite somebody onto a show, we're there to create great content. We're there to create a show. We're there to give them some visibility, them some authority, as well as us at the same time. So if they know that they're coming on to get coached by you or to get a consultation, then yeah, that makes sense, Jim. But if it's like you're inviting them on because you're like, hey, you're an authority, and then it's like a bait and switch to now you're in a sales call, that's not going to work, right? So what I'm really suggesting, so it could be that way. I'm stumbling over my words because it could be like what you said. If the expectation is they're coming for a consultation and it's also a show, that could work really well, and it could be a sales call and a show all at the same time. What is more likely, and the way I approach it, is they come on for a really high quality conversation. It's great content. And guess what? In that conversation, they're telling me all the stuff that I need to know to turn around and say, hey, thanks so much for being on my show. By the way, those stuff you talked about are problems I solved. Would you like to get on a sales call and talk about it? So it makes it just, that high quality conversation makes it really easy to turn it around into like an immediate sales call, right? We ended the conversation. I can make an offer to a sales call. There's a relationship built. It's very likely they're going to move to that next phase, and you can move, a lot of your guests into being paying clients. Yeah, good. Okay. Very cool. Okay, so now we've got LinkedIn, we've got YouTube, we've got the events and the show that are being our bridge between the two. What are the benefits of doing this? And there's three that I really want to point out. We've kind of talked about them a little bit, and then we're going to open this up for Q&A. So this is the last little bit here, but three main benefits I want to point out. So number one is that you get high value invitations that make conversations easier. So when you're reaching out on LinkedIn, when you're talking to people, you're growing your audience, you can invite them to attend your event. You can invite them to be a guest on your show, and you can also invite them to consume bits of your show. Like, for instance, I showed you Suzanne here. If someone else who is similar to Suzanne connects with me on LinkedIn, I can send them this clip and be like, hey, I thought of you. Here's a clip that you might resonate with, right? And I can send it to them. So really high quality invitations that make your conversations easier, which will lead to sales calls, right? Which brings us to our next point, which is short-term sales opportunities, right? So there's opportunity for quick sales because we're having high quality conversations, both in our messaging, but also those podcast interviews, right? Those can result in sales very, very quickly. And then also your monthly event grows your email list, and which will generate hot leads when you use this in conjunction with email, right? So this is kind of a momentum building sales cycle. We're essentially shortening your sales cycle. I think about, especially with the podcast, I don't know how long your sales cycle is, but if you could condense months and months of like warming up a client into one really high quality sales or high quality conversation, which is what the show does for you, you can shorten your sales cycle from months into like a week, because we're condensing a lot of quality conversation into a short amount of time. And then the last thing is that the long-term visibility and authority. By using LinkedIn and YouTube together, it's a 1-2 punch of like short-term and long-term, so that you build momentum over time. Awesome, guys. Let's open it up for Q&A. And as we do that, this is what I do. So if this is resonating with you, you know, the number one thing is that a lot of you just probably don't have time to do this. Like the things that I just outlined, to produce your own podcast, to invite all these people to your event, to be connected with people all the time. You'd be spending all of your time on YouTube, all of your time on LinkedIn, when I can do it and save you all that time and make sure that this is running correctly. I'm staying on top of all the best practices, and I'm going to produce your podcast. I'm going to distribute your podcast. I'm going to post it on YouTube for you. I'm going to help you make connections and make sure we're targeting the right people. Like, I can put this on easy mode for you. You can take this and do it yourself 100%. The strategy, go take it, go implement it. But if you want to save time, you want to do it like really well from the beginning, check out the linked leader. You can set up a one-on-one call with me at craig@brightworkstraining.com. You can just email me or shoot me a message on LinkedIn. And also the leader for this particular product is thelinkedleader.com. All right, cool. So I'm going to stop recording, and then we will just open it up for Q&A. So I'm going to stop sharing really quick.